Hello and welcome to U.S. Maritime Action. Today it's November 1st, Saturday, about 6:30 a.m. Pretty cloudy day. Looking like we may not see the sunrise, but we'll see. Anyways, we are here to talk about the Jones Act. So you may have watched my video with Colin Graybo about a month or so ago, but I didn't really get a chance to fully explain what I think about the Jones Act. So if you're not familiar, it is basically just a law that requires that goods transported by water between ports are carried on US flagged, US owned, US crewed, and US built ships. And because our shipbuilding market and shipbuilding capacity has declined, ships are now pretty expensive, and the use of waterways for trade has declined in the US compared to other forms of transportation like rail or pipeline, what have you. Also, we're here with Kira today. She's joining us on the walk. Kira, say hi. Kira. So yeah, do I think the Jones Act is fully responsible? No, I don't. I think it just forces us to feel the symptoms of having a weak shipbuilding and maritime sector. So why I don't think it's fully responsible, as some people, I see a lot of statements on the internet with things saying like, oh, we could use our inland waterways if we didn't have the Jones Act, or we could be trading between ports if we didn't have the Jones Act. That's partially true. The inland water things, not really. We actually have a pretty decent barge market, and that's about the only thing I would say is doing well, actually, is barges. A lot of other forms, particularly just between seaports other than Alaska and Hawaii, where it's just not getting much use. So I think we need to do something about it. I think the price does warrant some sort of call for change. We can't just ignore the fact that we don't have the shipbuilding capacity and the price point. Or I think another big one that's underrated is the ability to finance ships and have those loans for ships backed by a big government or corporation or something like that. And that's what China's really good at right now, is ship financing. And they have both capacity and financing, so that's why they're having such a boom, I believe. They started off with cheap labor. That's not really their biggest advantage anymore. And you can see that some of their shipyards are actually fairly highly automated. All right, so switching locations here, and we got ourselves a bit of sunshine. But as an engineer, why I don't like the Jones Act requirement is that it arbitrarily, in my opinion, dictates that the hull and superstructure, or more specifically, not just the hull, but the watertight envelope, have to be built here in the United States. I think it would be better to have a more broad or less specific requirement, considering the advent of block construction that became dominant in shipbuilding after World War II, and globalization. So, for instance, if we look at the automotive or aerospace industries, there's no restriction, say, to have the outside shell of the car and, the windows built in the United States for it to be on a US road. Same with an airplane. There's no restriction that says the fuselage of the airplane and the wings have to be built in the US. Otherwise, you can't fly passengers between airports or cargo between airports. Some kind of restriction like that doesn't exist for other transportation industries. yet they have a more active protection through basically subsidies and other government programs. The shipbuilding industry just has passive protection with the Jones Act, and again, I don't think from the build perspective that it's effective, otherwise we would still have a burgeoning shipbuilding industry. So we need to look at a more general requirement of protectionism. I think that is having some percentage stipulation of either value or maybe a certain percentage of the whole is built in the United States rather than the entire thing, and then you can take advantage of foreign shipyards. And the reason that I'm so adamant that we allow some sort of foreign help to rebuild our domestic and international fleet is that just the time frame we're facing to rebuild it on our own, I think, would be excessively long, easily over 10 years. Probably wouldn't be making a dent in the shipbuilding until 20 years. That's where we see a lot of countries that decide to invest in it. It's like 10 to 20 years, and then you start to see your investments pay off. It's definitely a long-term industry. And this also means that there's less ships available for mariners to serve on. And so we need to be building up our mariner workforce as quickly as we can as well. And we need to make sure we have the ships available to support that buildup. But that's a separate effort and not something I really deal with. I'm just in the shipbuilding industry, not in the merchant marine industry. So 3 ideas that I have for reforming the Jones Act and expanding our fleet. The first one I've already talked about a little bit is allow some portion to be built abroad. This is through block construction. You can ship portions of the ship from foreign shipyards to the United States and have the yard in the United States serve as the place of final assembly. Final assembly of a ship is still a pretty rigorous form of manufacturing. You're going to be welding, and in the final erection of the ship, you'll also be doing all the systems testing. So we shouldn't undervalue just the portion of ship assembly taking place here in the United States. That in and of itself would be a pretty big boost to our marine industry. So one of the biggest problems that faces U.S. shipbuilding and drives up costs is just the lack of scale. We're not having any companies that are placing orders for a large number of ships. And so whenever you buy a low unit volume of something, it tends to cause the cost per unit to get higher. That's a huge problem we have for shipbuilding. And another one is the size of our shipyards compared to foreign shipyards. We have such small shipyards. All of our commercial shipyards in the US are less than 100 acres. And a lot of the big commercial shipyards in Asia are over 500 acres. Another idea is using sister ships. So this has some historical precedent. Back in the late 1800s, there was a couple ships for, I believe, some kind of liner service, and the American shipping company wanted to buy 2 of these ships from England and use them domestically, and there was an exception made for that, and the agreement reached was that the 2 ships bought, there would be sister ships of those also built here in the United States. So that allowed an expansion of the fleet, and it also supported our domestic shipbuilding industry. I think that's great, and we should be content with something like that. The third idea that I have is borrowing Warren Buffett's idea of a import credit system. So how this would work would be that a shipyard would receive an order from a company for a ship, and say that ship is 100,000 deadweight tons. They could then go and order an 100,000 deadweight ton ship from another shipyard, or maybe an equivalent value ship from a foreign shipyard, something like that. And this would allow us to have more flexibility in our fleet composition, and you could have different types of vessels purchased from abroad that maybe there isn't a specialization or a builder that's done that before in the United States, and then you're not forcing your domestic purchasers to kind of be an experiment for building a one-off type of ship. And we've seen this happen numerous times. There's almost always cost runs and delays. That's just a part of building big things, and it's very hard to avoid those kind of situations. So that's why I think we should focus on ships that are militarily useful, tankers, roll-on, roll-offs, and heavy lift vessels.